And I'd also like to say good afternoon to you all as well, and welcome to our first session of the CiC webinars to do with physical activity today, titled Getting Started. My name is Jake Joyce, and I am the physical health stream at CiC, and we are joined today by our host for these live sessions, Grant Yule. For those who are new to the webinars, Grant is a seasoned strength and conditioning coach with over 23 years of experience. His background in rehabilitation, athlete performance, and rehabilitation makes him an expert in the field, and Grant has dedicated the majority of his professional life to assisting others in achieving their optimal physical health. The aim for this session is to be as interactive as possible, so please, we do invite you to use the chat function and introduce yourselves and where you're from, comment and post any questions that you may have as well as we go through. We do have enough time at the end of the session today to go through all of your questions, and Grant will get through as many as we possibly can. I'd also like to add this session is being recorded, so if you would like to watch it back yourself, or you do have any colleagues that were unable to attend today and would like to watch the webinar, please do let them know. And now, without further ado, I will start the recording and hand you over to Grant to get the session started.
Hello everybody. So this is the first webinar in a series that we're going to do. As Jake kind of alluded to, I've been doing this for a minute. I kind of started when I was 17 coaching in Austria. And yeah, 23 years later, I'm here today. So I've had a lot of experience and really different aspects of what I do. I've worked with Olympic athletes. I've worked with every type of endurance athlete. But when I finally moved back to Scotland, the biggest thing that I started to see where I wanted to help with the gap was in the market was really the amount of people who don't know how to get started in exercise and quite often are living in kind of chronic pain. So my specialty's kind of moved to doing rehabilitation, and now what we call prehabilitation. So it's how to do the things that are preventative, so we're looking after our physical health, so we're not suffering from chronic pains, and really how that absolutely directly affects with our happiness. And it's all aspects of our well-being are connected. I think there's a lot of fear when it comes to exercise, and really my job is to create a logical understanding of how each individual can get started that's best for them. And that's really the most important thing. There is not one style or one way of doing anything. It really has to suit your lifestyle. That's how we can create really a healthy habit. And the best expression I can say is I want to normalize exercise. I don't want it to be something which is not important to you. I actually want it something to benefit you long term. So today we're really going to look at the outer aspects of what is exercise, the dangers of sedentary lifestyle, which is really the biggest problem that we have globally when it comes to sitting for long periods of time and how it can directly affect not just our physical health, but also our mental health. And then I'm just going to look at, right, what are the types of exercise? How is it all broken down into? What are some of the obstacles and hurdles that we have? But today I want this to be really interactive as well. So we're going to have a really long Q&A at the end. And I want you just to be honest, and there's no stupid questions here. Please just ask away. I've got a good amount of knowledge and experience that I should be able to answer everything for you. So I'm going to go into the presentation for today and we'll get going. So we are looking at this ugly lad here. Oh God, that was a few years back, but the hairline's gone a bit, unfortunately. So yeah, as I said, I've been coaching a long time. Strength and conditioning coach. I specialise in athlete performance and rehabilitation. So my big thing is I come from a lineage of teachers, and we've got this one skill where we want to try and help everyone as much as we can. And that's where my success has come. I'm not a particularly good salesman. I'm not good at selling myself a lot of times. Where my success has come is that I genuinely want to try and help people as much as I can. So what I just kind of touched on before, the big problem that we look at nowadays is the dangers of sedentary lifestyles. And this is really something where you'll suddenly probably realise that you're probably included with the rest of the population in that, is that if you're seated for more than 6 hours a day, it will directly have massive impact on your health. And what do we do now? If you think about it, we get up from bed, we drive to work, or we're working from home, and we sit behind a desk and a computer for long, long stretches of time. Once we finish our job, we tend to then move ourselves back to the couch and we zone out, we chill out, relax, we have dinner, we go to bed, and it's a repetitive cycle that goes round and round and round. And what we look at the effects is that it's obviously the impact it has is that it's going to affect our metabolism, our ability to regulate our blood sugar, so it can lead to diabetes, and obviously it will affect our heart. So we look at blood pressure, and it's going to be related to various types of cancers as well, and obviously, as we talked about, our kind of our mental health. So what we kind of look at is if you look at the mental health aspect of it, and this would probably you've probably heard the terminology, the 4 o'clock slump that we have after lunch. We come to the last few hours of the day. You've got that difficulty in concentrating. You get sleepy. Then when you get up from your chair, you're going to have these aches and pains as well within your body. The most kind of common ones we'll see is people with shoulder pain or back pain or hip pain. Neck pain's obviously in there as well. If you go to the NHS website, they give you really, really good advice, obviously, but it's actually quite daunting for somebody that's not active at all. So if you look at it, how do we combat being having a sedentary lifestyle? Well, they look at you doing 2 strength days a week, at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity, and you reduce your time, obviously, spent sitting or lying down. You try and break up your day. Now, if I say to somebody who is not active that I suddenly want you to go and do 2 strength sessions, and then I want you to do 150 minutes of exercise, that's going to seem way too much. And that might just feel like, what's the point of even starting? I've never got the time to do that at all. And that's how we kind of create this negative loop, negative cycle. And for me, even though that information NHS gives that is accurate, it's not a good representation of people who do nothing at all that want to make a change. So that's how exercise can become really daunting and off-putting, and it ends up being bottom of your priority list. So just as I said, where can it go wrong? Well, when we look at the world of exercising, it is daunting because a lot of it's unregulated and there's so many streams that you can go down. You can go to your gyms, of course, you can go running, you can go and do online classes, and there's endless amounts of types of exercise, and every one of anybody that you speak to will claim that the exercise they do is the most effective. And actually, if you're starting from scratch, exercise has base foundations that we're going to look at, that what you're trying to achieve, regardless of the sport or the activity, there's these foundations that you need to build yourself from, and that's something that you can do from the comfort of your own home. The big thing I feel I kind of say to my clients when they first come into the door, the first time that I meet them, and they can be often very nervous, is I tell them they've actually done the hard bit. So making the decision to actually go into the gym is the real difficulty folk have, where we're really bad at procrastinating and overthinking things, and we can build up our own anxiety, and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. But if you can make that effort of just making the first step, not necessarily going into the gym, but actually deciding that you're going to make a change, that's the hard bit. To make that decision. Once you've made a decision, we can really build on it from there. Other thing that folk have is that they really set themselves a goal. Now, in my next webinar, we're really going to look at how do we create healthy habits. But one of the things I'll go over shortly is the mentality people have with exercise is that they go in with a goal in mind. And that, for me, is not the right approach to exercise. If you go in with a goal, hypothetically, say you've got a summer holiday coming up, you feel the pressure's on, you want to lose a stone. So what quite often happens is you start not eating enough food, or you start over exercising, and you put yourself into a routine that's not sustainable. And anything that's not sustainable ends up reverting back to where you were or worse. What I always say to folk is we actually, for habits to stick, we need to create a value behind it. And that's a really individual question you can ask yourself. Why is it? Why is it you're on this webinar today? And you maybe want to make a change, you just don't know how. But I'm here to help you on that aspect. What you can do is look at the values to why you want to get started. And your values are going to be different from person to person. And a key value could be that you don't want to be living in chronic pain. If you're waking up every day with sore back, if you're maybe struggling with anxiety, if you've got a build up of energy, if you want to be a better part of yourself, if you want to be able to play with your kids in the park, if you want to be able to play with your grandkids in the park when you're older, you've got to find something where there's actual meaning behind why you exercise. And then if you can create that value, you're much more likely to stick to it. Goals are great as waypoints. So, for instance, there was just the London Marathon that was on last week, and incredible to watch. And you see all those people, and they've been obviously training for the marathon, but what you probably find the majority of the people that have done the marathon, for instance, is they've maybe got a base of exercise and it's something that they do every week and it's part of their habit already. And having a goal, a physical goal, is great to do if exercising is already a normal habit for yourself. It can give you that little bit of inspiration. And I say goals are great waypoints, but you want your values to be the reason that you keep your routine every week, right? Regardless of your scenario. Um, the other thing that we look at, just before we go on to the types of exercise, sorry, is prioritizing exercise as well. So I've never met a person that hasn't told me that I just don't have time to exercise. So that's the most common thing. I just don't know when can I do it? So the priority of actually the doing becomes bottom, right? And that's totally understandable. If you work a stressful job, if you've got a family, you can just find that your regular day-to-day life is just completely full. And then exercise, you become a second thought. It's not even just exercise, your own, self-care becomes a second priority. But the problem is that can directly impact on all the other aspects of your life. So how productive you're going to be in work, how much energy you've got to spend with your family. If you're not exercising, it can impact your sleep. So I think the big thing for me is making exercise a priority is so important because it's going to help and benefit every other aspect of your life. My big thing, and we're going to talk about this in the next webinar as well, is exercising doesn't need to be anything extreme. It can be simply, if you're doing nothing, it can start with just going for a walk twice a week, 3 times a week, and just going out at your own pace. Even just the mindfulness and just being able to get out in the fresh air is a great way to start. My line that I use for everything is you need to set your own minimum, not the maximum that you can do every week. And that is just dependent on one, your time scale, yes, and two, your experience and what your actual starting platform is. If you can set your minimum, and that's a real honest minimum of what you can do in a week, and you put that in your diary, but let it become a fixed term, then you're much more likely to stick to it. If you try and start with too much motivation, for instance, that I'm going to now start training 5, 6 days a week, that's not sustainable and it's not realistic, because when you have your busiest, most stressed weeks, you're not going to be able to sustain that. What you can do in your most busiest stressed weeks is the minimum, because that's what you base it on. So looking at the different types of exercise and where we can go with this, if we start with the most common and basic one is your aerobic capacity. And so your cardiovascular. Now, what we look at is when people associate cardio, they often just think that's the best way to strip body fat from you, and that's simply not the truth. However, it does have incredible benefits to you. Looking after your lungs and your heart and your blood circulation isn't just going to help your physical benefits in terms of aesthetics. It will also all the internal improvements within your heart circulation and your blood pressure, as I said, your blood sugar levels. Cardiovascular doesn't mean that you have to work as hard as you can either. There's 4 zones that we look at in your aerobic capacity at your heart rates, and zones 1 to 4. Um, Zone 1 being a very moderate casual walk for yourself, which most people should be able to be capable of. And if you're not capable of walking, there's also machines that you can use. You can work your way through it. But initially, what we can look at is, can we input a little bit of aerobic capacity into your daily weeks? And that's not just going to benefit your heart and your lungs. Getting up and moving will also help you posturally as well. That's the easiest one that we can look at, that everyone should be able to start doing. Now, looking at the other aspects of it, and this is where exercise can become really complicated, because the next 3 that we're going to look at is your flexibility, the stability, and the strength training. So realistically, these are things covering everything from yoga and Pilates to doing resistance training. That's when things become really overwhelming, and you start going, my God, I'm not exercising, and now he's asking me to do all these different aspects of it. Actually, no, you'll find that a lot of the exercises that you do, for instance, Pilates is a great one, does implement most of the things that I'm covering here. And it's now for me to talk through each aspect, but also then for you to think, is there something that you, because again, that's how it will become a nice habit that you'll maintain if you're going out and doing something that you enjoy. So the first one I look at, and this is the one that you'll see the guy obviously standing beside his desk stretching down here, is that we look at mobility and flexibility. So when we look at this, you'll maybe classically think of doing yoga and constant stretching. When we are in a seated position, posturally, we're putting ourselves at risk, because we're telling our bodies being in a seated position is its natural state to be in. When I look at posture, everyone usually when I say that pulls their shoulders back. When I look at posture, I want you to understand that there isn't a human being alive that doesn't have some form of imbalance within their body. That can be part genetic, of course, but it's because of the type of jobs that we do. What I'm also going to refer to here, and when I look at flexibility and mobility, is I'm going to actually reference more the joints of our body. And if I look at myself being in a seated position currently, my hips, for instance, are a multifaceted joint. They're designed to move in different directions, but we tend to only do 2 ranges of motion within our hip, and that's flexion and extension. So straightening your leg and bending your knee in the seated position. When you're in the seated position, not only are you then going to be over contracting one side of your body, that means that the muscles, rather than being in a condition that they can relax and contract, are going to be in a permanent state of contraction, which means posturally you're going to be in a poorer position, which means then you're going to be at a higher injury risk, and you're just going to be generally feeling tight and sore. That will affect your shoulders and your hips and your neck, of course. So what we look at mobility and flexibility training is finding actually where your own imbalances are. I've got some really amazing content that's going to be coming out in the future that you'll be able to see, and that will help you with this and recognize where it is that you need to work on. Yoga is a great way to get started, but there's also ways that you can just find out some basic stretches for particular parts of your body that will just instantly help you off the bat. Whenever we do flexibility training, I say to yourself, you're going to probably see a 10 to 15% increase in the range of motion, but you're going to lose 99.9% of that after 40 minutes, but you'll keep that tiny little bit. So every time you're doing it, you're slowly going to see the improvements, and you'll be able to put your body into bigger ranges of motion, which means that you'll be in a healthier postural positioning. The second part that we look at, the third part that we look at when it comes to physical exercise is stability training. Now, stability training is one that you may be not as common with, but essentially it's the ability to balance. It's our brain talking to our nervous system and being able to control our bodies. So when we look at our flexibility, we're looking at the range of motion within the muscles and joints. But what we then look at with stability is splitting our body and looking at our single sides. So if we stand on one leg, for instance, or we try and support ourselves with one arm, we all have those imbalances of having our stronger and our weaker side. What we do with stability training is we try and bring a little bit of neutrality. So there's even, you're going to be much more balanced between both sides of your body. I'm very right dominant in everything that I do, and that comes through sport. What I want to do, make sure is my left side's not getting left behind. Stability training classically would be if you looked at something like Pilates, for instance. That's a really popular one at the moment. Pilates is a fantastic way of gaining not just stability, but the control through your core. Yoga takes a lot of stability with the poses that you make as well. What you do also look at with stability training is it's the foundations of strength training as well. What we find is the older we get, the worse our balance becomes. So that's where you certainly see with older people, they'll have more common falls, because their neuroreceptors aren't able to process as quick, and they can't stabilize and balance, and they start losing their center of gravity. So stability training is the next aspect, and then that follows through strength training, which has become incredibly popular over the last 10 years for all the benefits that it has. Because with strength training, you really tick a lot of the boxes that you're going to gain from the other three. You kind of combine them in a lot of ways, depending on the type of strength training you do. Classically, this used to be known, if anybody's thought of the strength training, they're thinking of bodybuilders, but actually no, strength training is something that every individual should incorporate into their training, whether you're somebody that's never exercised in your life, regardless of your age or your sex, or your experience. Strength training and just doing enough is going to have so many physical benefits for you, as well as improving your bone density, your joint function, improving obviously the muscle, ligament, and tendon strength, and it's a great combative way of staving off osteoporosis and sarcopenia. But it can be a very daunting thing when we think of strength training. But again, one of my later units will look at it with strength training. We actually will look at doing body weight training is also strength training. So there's different ways that we can do it, and we can incorporate it all. Classically, strength training is something that you're going to be doing from a gym environment, just so you have access to the equipment. Also being physically active, as I talked about before, we look at it as how it can affect your mental health. And there's been incredible research. My last webinar that I did, it was the end of the first series. We actually did a full webinar on how the physical health and mental health are connected and can help each other massively. So by doing physical activity and increasing your heart rate, you're also going to get that, you talk about that runner's high, you get that boost of endorphins. So there's a much more kind of clarity of thought. It's a great way of actually using it to get rid of, maybe if you're somebody that's quite anxious all the time as well, if you have too much nervous energy, it just brings you back down to an even keel. It also has, proved to improve your sleep as well, and that's one of those integral parts that we look at, is the direct effect of if you don't exercise, it's probably more likely that you're a poorer sleeper, and then if you're not getting enough sleep, how it can directly affect how stressed that you are, how productive that you are. So yeah, by just being a little bit active, the chances are you're actually going to improve your sleep with that as well. And it's also a great way, if you're somebody that's maybe not got a great social bubble or a big friends group, it's a great way of actually creating a community and interacting with people that you don't know and can become your friends, especially for somebody that lives alone. It's a brilliant way of maybe meeting people that are like-minded or completely different-minded to yourself, and open up maybe a new community of people to yourself. So it will absolutely be a great way to reduce loneliness and just improving your self-esteem. Now that's saying that, there's not an person that doesn't suffer from some form of body dysmorphia. And as I say, I always try and separate how you look to how you feel, and they're very different things. And they're also quite connected too, because we're very bad as humans to compare ourselves to, whether it's celebrities online, or it can just be the person that maybe you're working beside, or it could be that you look at somebody and you say, I wish I looked like that person. I promise you, whoever you compare yourselves to, they're comparing themselves to somebody else. Because what we look at with exercise as well is when we're out of routine or we don't exercise, the chances are we're going to have poorer self-esteem about ourselves a lot of times. Now, the act of exercising doesn't mean that you're instantly going to be happy with yourself at all. Absolutely not, in fact. But by putting the work in, by knowing that you're actually making the effort more than anything, and it's a healthier habit, it will improve your self-esteem about yourself overall. So we're going to go on to the Q&A shortly. So just a kind of brief overview. Now, please know the next webinar is going to be much more of the proactive of, right, what is going to be your first steps? But I want this just to be something to get your brain thinking and you get the cogs going, that you're now going to think to yourself, right, what's he said today? You're going to be able to go back and re-watch this as well. This is, as I said, it's recorded webinar. But the brief overview I want you to kind of say to yourself is, right, how do I set the minimum amount that it's going to be a fixed in my diary, that I'll never drop doing it, rather than setting your maximum? So connecting that to what we talked about, the characteristics of being somebody that's value driven rather than goal driven. Building your fundamentals, so the 4 aspects: the aerobic, mobility, stability, and strength. The 4 aspects that you looked at, is there anything that you've maybe thought to yourself, I actually fancy trying that, or I quite like the sound of that style of training, the benefits that you're going to get from? Improving your knowledge on how your own body moves. This is a really important one for me. I think it's really bad in our lives that we never really get taught how our own biomechanics work. So if something goes wrong, whether you wake up with back pain, which is a common one, we don't know how to actually correct it and what to do. So I'm here to help improve your knowledge on how your body moves. Part of the series of webinars that we do is we're going to do a live demonstration on mobility and stability. And it's going to be a great way for you to follow along with me. I'm going to show you some really basic things that you can do at home. In fact, I'm going to do it from the space in my own kitchen and show you how little space you actually need to do this. And this will actually hopefully impart some knowledge and information for you that will help you big time, which is going to be a great tool for you to build from. So yes, this is all about forming a plan that suits your lifestyle, not an idealistic lifestyle or somebody else's lifestyle. It's about me trying to help you understand and develop a plan that's going to work to help improve your own physical and mental health. Thank you very much. We're going to go to the Q&A now, and I'll pass it back to Jake, if he's on yet. We'll see. If not, Sam's going to help me.
Yeah, I think Jake, yeah, he's not on the call, he's on hold. Thank you for such an insightful session, Grant. Yeah, really, really useful. From a personal perspective, actually, I just a couple of weeks ago ran a marathon, and I having that goal, for the last 4 months, and then that kind of coming and going, I do feel a little bit flat, if I'm honest. Yeah, it was really good to be reminded of just the little things we can do to kind of, get ourselves moving. Hopefully everyone found that valuable and it applied to everyone, regardless of fitness level or background. I think what we'd like to do now is invite you to ask any questions that you might have for Grant. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat box and we'll go through them one by one. We'd really encourage you to ask anything that's on your mind. So whether it's about, starting your fitness journey, overcoming any specific challenges, optimizing your current routine, Grant, would really love to hear from you. Please come in with your questions.
So, big thing I'll say to folk as well, and we're going to do the future ones, please use the Q&A as well. What we try and do with other webinars is just ask away as I go. I'm happy to get interrupted and get back to it. But yeah, I think Q&As, especially if there may be things that you've tried and failed before, and any kind of basic understanding from there, fire it into the chat and we'll take it from there. So yeah, I think what Sam was saying before as well was that's such a common one from when you achieve something amazing as completing a marathon, and there is such a natural feeling of, right, what do I do now?
Yeah.
It's, and the thing is, you're so hyper focused on doing or achieving a goal, that you put so much time and energy into it. It's only natural that you hit this peak and you crash back down, and it's just that kind of bit of an empty feeling. And I always say to folk, it's like, don't, for you, Sam, don't feel like you have to go out and immediately try and push to run another marathon straight away. It's
That's the
sometimes just,
temptation. Yeah.
it's just maybe just find a little bit more balance and say to yourself, look, I'm just going to go back and do some basic training sessions and just enjoy a run without maybe pushing myself to the max. Because I think naturally, now you've done it, I think you'll naturally find something that your next target will be, because you obviously, you've got a very active lifestyle yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question that has come in. So so the main thing I'd like to do is to start strength training properly. I turned 40 and was diagnosed with PMDD last year. I get a bunch of physical and mental symptoms with that, including heightened anxiety, depression, and occasionally suicidal feelings for about 10 days every month. Between juggling a full-time job, 2 kids, and walking our golden retriever every morning, I'm struggling to find time to start. I already go to the gym on Sunday mornings for a cardio workout, and do find when I go for a run, it helps with the mental health aspect of the PMDD, even on bad days when it exacerbates the physical health symptoms. I feel too self-conscious to tackle weights at the gym, though, and not sure entirely, where I should start with it at home. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, no, I'm really sorry that you're struggling like that. I think most importantly, you're saying all the right things, that you're wanting to be proactive and understand that there's certainly things that you can do, and strength training's incredible. I've got quite a few clients that I deal with that have been through similar to yourself, and oh my, they just they always say to me, it's like, no matter how bad a day is, if they have a good deadlift session, they feel great. Being able to pick some weights up and slam them down is sometimes one of the best things that you can do. Yeah, going to the gym and going into resistance training can be really daunting, and especially, I think what you saw before, one of the slides said that 60% of new gym memberships quit after or under 6 months of use, and a lot of that is they just have a feeling of, one, a little bit nervous to get started, 2, don't want to get hurt. It can be quite, I think, intimidating as well, especially for females to go into a weights room for the first time. I actually think the best thing that you can do would be to go to a style of gym that I work in, and this is something which you can get in any part of the world now. It's a small group gym. So they've become quite popular now. Now, with small group gyms, the whole point of them is that you train in a small group, obviously, but you're essentially getting small group personal training at the same time. So you're in classes. My gym doesn't do classes bigger than 8, but we run 14, 15 classes a day on all aspects, including strength training. So in my classes, I can have folk that have trained for years that are, super strong. I also have folk that have never lifted a weight in their life in the same class, and it works because it's a smaller environment. I can help and keep an eye and make sure everyone's safe and actually doing the right technique. And so if you look up maybe a small group gym, there'll definitely be one in your area that you can go to. Can be a wee bit pricier than a commercial gym, I won't lie. Sometimes can be similar, but absolutely worth it. The amount of success stories we have from people that have, completely newbies that are 40 plus, that are now, going to the gym religiously, because it's a really nice community and environment. So it's a great way, if you're just having a bad day, to get talking to folk. Like I call my gym the Cheers bar. Everyone knows your name. It's that kind of way. It doesn't matter who you are. There's no egos, and we're there to kind of build your own confidence. But I think, yeah, if you can maybe look up small group gyms and take it from there, that'd be a great start for you.
Thanks, Graham. So on to the next question. I do Northern Soul dancing, but I find I'm exercising more at the weekends, but come away with sore knees and hips, and then all week sitting at my desk. So I know I need to do something during that week. So I think probably the question of what that might look like to help those
So
sore knees and hips.
you know what Northern Soul dancing is, by the way. What's like kind of with any that's brilliant. I love dancing myself, to be fair. Although you didn't want to see me at my wedding. So yeah, so what you're kind of saying, and what I'd always say with any sport or activity that you do, you become conditioned to that sport, but you also become imbalanced to that sport. And if you go from doing dancing regularly, which is great, please don't stop that. And when I say this, there's going to be impacts within your joints as well, right? Like any sport, like running with Sam, there's impact. It's just part of the sport, which is absolutely fine. But if you go from dancing to then being seated for long periods of time, we're going to have a couple of things happen. One is that your quads, for instance, where they actually connect into your knee, they're probably getting over tight and over contracted because they're not getting a chance to relax at any stage, because when you're in a seated position, you're still contracting through the quadriceps, which can pull on the joint of the knee. So you actually feel like you've got joint pain, where sometimes, a lot of times, it ends up just being that the actual muscle is just over contracted, overstimulated. It needs to relax. So maybe trying to put some regular yoga into your routines. Now, yoga doesn't mean that you have to go to the gym. There's some actually great online on YouTube. You can do some stretching sessions. Even if you just look up yoga for bad knees, there'll be honestly endless videos that you'll be able to watch that are no longer than 10-15 minutes long. And it's something that maybe you could do in your lunch break and maybe put that between, and just trying to increase the range of motion within the actual joint and muscles themselves more on a regular basis will help reduce the amount of pain that you have. And then long term, yeah, developing strength through a large range of motion within the actual joint itself. So doing resistance training, increasing your squat technique or your single leg exercises, and the range of motion that you do in that. The more that you put your body into a range of motion in a loaded position, the lower the chances of injuring yourself are.
Wonderful. Thank you, Graham. Would I get similar results from doing workouts at home compared to the gym? I guess what I really want to know is what kind of exercises can I do at home that would give me similar results to lifting weights at the gym? Are home workouts as effective as gym workouts? What can substitute for weightlifting at home?
Yeah, so yes and no. It's a bit of a double answer to you. So I think with home workouts, there's so many benefits to it. And again, the access that people have nowadays online to what you can do. Bodyweight exercises are really difficult, and they are actually incredible ways of strengthening your body, yourself. A lot of times we look at it, there's so many skill levels to bodyweight exercises that you can do. And, you know, my simple thing I always say to folk is look at Olympic gymnasts. Now, they do resistance training, but the majority of their training, especially from being children, wasn't with weights, right? They built a lot of their core foundational strength from doing bodyweight exercises. It's just actually understanding that there's different levels to it. So there's some great actually at home bodyweight exercises that you can look, not necessarily I'm saying do HIIT training, but bodyweight strength exercises that you can look up. There's some that, you know, I would struggle to do. You can do, like, you can get somebody to do a single leg squat, I promise you they're going to have incredible amount of ankle, knee and hip stability and core strength. The advantages, if you're progressing, of going to the gym is the fact that your body adapts to stimulus and change. So that's how we get stronger. We have to put our bodies under increasing amounts of stress. So eventually we run out of ways of doing that if we're doing body weight training. And that's where we add equipment, so that we are creating new stimulus for our bodies to adapt to. And that's how we increase our overall full body strength.
Thank you, Grant. Great to be reminded there are so many big or small things we can do to get and keep fit without going to the gym. As someone who's never been a gym person but prefers dog walking and cycling. So just a bit of feedback, just a comment there for you, Grant.
Brilliant.
I like the idea of strength training, but some of the gym culture seems intimidating. I also know that you need to make sure that you're doing it correctly so you minimize the risk of injury. So very much kind of aligned with a lot of the stuff that you were talking about around, stability, mobility, posture, all that sort of stuff.
I'd also say I think gym environments, I think for anyone that walks into a gym, you can, the natural thing is it feels like an old Wild West movie and you walk into the saloon and everyone turns and stares at you, which we have that kind of picture in our heads, which is not the way. Gyms, especially now, there is obviously, there's going to be good and bad gyms out there like anything, but the majority of gyms, you're going to find once you're in, a fairly nice environment to be in. What I would say is don't your value for money if you're going to a commercial gym is maybe just investing in some personal training sessions to start with. Obviously, do your research and see if you can find a coach that becomes highly regarded. But see, just doing some basic personal training sessions, it will set you up with a program and the confidence and knowledge that you're doing exercises correctly, and also exercises that are going to benefit yourself individually. Most gyms do a free workout plan when you first join. I'd also absolutely promote maybe just doing a pack of sessions, like 4 or 5 hours of sessions with a trainer. It will seem expensive at the time, but it's money. It's going to be so worth it, because then you'll actually be able to have the confidence that, and you'll give yourself your own adherence that you'll be much more likely to go to the gym on a regular basis.
Cheers, Grant. What do you think about aqua gym? I can't jog because of a herniated disc. I find aqua gym great fun, but are 2 sessions a week enough to get fit?
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I will never have a bad word to say about really any exercise or form of exercise. It's because I think just the nature of being active is the most important thing. And aqua gym is brilliant for obviously reducing the amount of stress that goes into your joints, right? So, can you get fit from 2 exercises a week? Absolutely, you can. You can get 200% fitter than doing nothing at all. So it will absolutely improve on that. And that obviously sounds like that's your minimum, right? That's your part of your routine and your habit that you're doing. So, and what you can do is then maybe looking at what can I do to add on to that, right? And that might just be being a little bit more active in your day-to-day life, whether it's going out for sort of some short regular walks, or maybe then if you're going to an aqua gym, does it have a resistance gym in it, or does it do maybe Pilates or stretch classes? And maybe seeing if you could add maybe one more of those in, and see if you can build on top of your minimum in a way that suits you best, right? And that's what I would say to you is maybe find the thing that attracts you more. So I would maybe say to yourself, as somebody that struggles with knee pain, then certainly going down more the kind of flexibility trait would be the next kind of thing I would look at for yourself.
Brilliant. Thank you, Grant. My favourite form of exercise is swimming, but I find it really difficult to fit in around full-time work, particularly with all the surrounding equipment needed, making it not ideal to just pop in on the way to or from work. Any tips for any tips for more effectively making this stick in my diary?
Was that swimming? Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, that was swimming.
Yeah, I think I know swimming can be bit problematic sometimes when it comes to how busy pools can be as well, right? Like I know, especially my wife's a swimmer, really high level swimmer, but in our frustrations a lot of times is finding times in the day where the pool's a bit quieter. You'll find a lot of your gyms as well. Maybe look up when they are quieter when it comes to your own routine. I think that's just a case of maybe sitting down, look at your own diary and say to yourself, right, I know there's not a person alive that won't be able to put an hour aside, right? Maybe an hour. It's the hour maybe when you finish your job and you've put the kids to bed and you're rather than sitting on the couch, is maybe then making that decision of, right, actually no, I can go at this time and I can make the effort to try and do that. If swimming's the thing that you love, I know the problem with sometimes is pool access, but trying to maybe just get the increase of your basic exercises. You can obviously do exercises to help your improve your swimming as well, through doing resistance training or stability training, will massively kind of benefit you from there.
Brilliant. I would like to build exercise into my routine. I'm a female over 45 with occasional knee pain, but keen to build more bone and core strength. Any suggestions, Grant?
Yeah, so I think great way. I mean, I'll give you twofold. I think it's depending on your kind of own circumstances. If you go into, again, YouTube's a great tool for you. Now, obviously, you'll know yourself from how things are done, but I think for somebody that's starting out in wanting to do strength training, the first aspect that I look at improving is core strength. And doing core training doesn't mean, by the way, doing 10,000 setups. It's more of the small pelvic movements of how to control and build strength three-dimensionally. When I talk about core training, the way I describe it to my clients is that your core is the trunk of the tree, and that's what's going to support every other part of your body, right? Yeah, your arms and your legs, they're just the branches. So if we can fundamentally three-dimensionally build the trunk, it will give us the platform to do whatever we want on top of that, right? So I'd say to someone who wants to start off, actually look at just building your core strength, and that's maybe doing it 2-3 times a week, no longer than 10-15 minutes, until you'll see improvement yourself, and that will open the doors to what you can do after that. My suggestion again would be to, if you want to get into resistance training, start with a small group gym. Great way to learn. It's not as expensive as a personal trainer, and it will put you in a position that you can actually start from scratch and know you're going to be doing the right things.
Thank you, Grant. The next one links to your point around mental health and how it impacts physical health and vice versa.
Yeah.
If someone is stressed from work or otherwise, do you think exercise can add to this in a negative way? How would you approach this?
Yes and no, right? A type of exercise is probably what we would look at. I think if you're doing now, really popular example, it would be for folk that are maybe already quite stressed. And the reason I say that is anything where you have to put yourself into fight or flight modes can actually create more stress for you. And that panicky feeling of I can't get my breath back is not great. But exercise is so big that, if we choose the correct type of exercise, it will absolutely combat stress and bring you back to a much more even keel. So maybe finding something that isn't so high intensity is always maybe the thing I would look to do if I'm having a really stressed day.
Thanks, Grant. The next one you might not be able to answer, but it links to one of your webinars in the series. I really want to know some key exercises that will increase my mobility, being in desk-based roles for a lot of my working career.
Yeah, so we look at traditionally now, rather than static stretching, we try and be much more dynamic. And there's two areas that we look at: is the flexibility of the muscle, pardon me, and the mobility of the joint. So the first thing I would say to you is look up Kelly Starrett. He's a sports scientist, doctor from America. He's got a book called Supple Leopard, which is brilliant. And what that looks at is increasing the range of motion within the joint by, can I quickly explain it? The joint itself, shoulder, hip, knee, ankle, whatever we look at, there is obviously gaps within the joint itself. So the design is it allows you to have naturally from birth that range of motion that you can put your body into. And over time, what we do is, referring to the hips before, once we're in a more fixed position, all that excess space that's within the joint capsule gets filled with fascia. Essentially, it's like mold within the body, and your body says, "Look, I'm not using this excess space. I'm going to fill it up with fascia," and it restricts the range of motion within the joint itself. And when that happens, you're then going to be putting a lot of times in. You're going to have a limited range of motion, and then that means that you're going to put more strain onto that range of motion on the muscles that you use, right? By clearing out the joint capsule, it sounds worse than it is, will increase the range of motion. It will get rid of the fascia and it'll allow you to, once again, have that range of motion within the joints, right? So they are great exercise or great ways to approach it. You don't need to do more than maybe 10 minutes a day. The guy that really is the leading expert in that is Kelly Starrett. And a lot of the stuff I do, we're going to obviously do in the next webinar. No, upcoming one. I think maybe
I think it's
next
webinar
month.
3 in the series.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Correct.
The mobility one that we do is going to be really for people that are desk bound, and I'll take you through all the best exercises, and you can just incorporate them into your own daily life.
Thanks, Graham. How do you know how much cardio versus strength training you should be doing?
I think if you're doing both, then you're already doing great, right? I think it comes down to the intensity of what you're doing each of them at, right? So that'll be relative to an individual. So again, we've look at the NHS approach, the minimum of like two strength sessions a week is what we recommend, and then 150 minutes of cardiovascular, and that can be anywhere from zones 1 to 4. So just finding a balance. If you are doing both, it's maybe looking at where you're weaker is what you're wanting to improve. So if you're feeling actually you get out of breath a lot quicker than you want to, then it might be that you want to improve your cardiovascular capacity. But if you're feeling maybe you're suffering from chronic pains, a lot of times it might be that you need to increase the amount of strength or resistance training that you're doing. So it's maybe just a bit of self-reflection to understand what your body needs, and that is by am I feeling actually quite weak? Then I'll increase my strength training. Am I feeling deconditioned? Then I want to improve my kind of cardiovascular. But if you're doing both, you're already winning in my book.
Brilliant. Thanks, Graham. And then the final question for today's session. Apologies, we won't be able to get to all of them. I've always been active, but I've struggled to get back my fitness after some treatment for a long-term condition, and I can't get back to where I was 2 years ago. I do a lot of cardio. I've joined a gym for weight training, and feel really intimidated by it, but feel this is the only way back to running half marathons. Is there anything you can suggest?
I think I'd kind of say to you, don't never try and compare yourself to 2 years ago. I think that's a real common thing that we do, and it just gets a kind of negative impact. You can only deal with who you are now, and it's not to say you can't be better than 2 years ago, but we're really bad at comparing ourselves to maybe to who we were before. And things change. That's just life. We need to have kind of the mental approach of being positive with everything that we do, and understand that by being proactive, which it sounds like you're doing, is being in the now and trying to actually focus on what am I capable of doing now. Now, I'm sorry if you're feeling intimidated in the gym. We were talking about it before. That's really common, and I want everyone to feel really comfortable in the environment that they train in, because they're going to be able to keep that as a habit and something that they keep for the rest of their life. What I was saying before as well, the small group gym's a great way to start, or a personal trainer. I think, that cliched line, knowledge is power, is really apt when it comes to exercise. So having a coach that can, embark on you, the correct techniques and the correct exercises is the best way to do it. But the most important thing is having a program that's specific to you individually. If you are having a program that's designed to get you stronger with the weights that are appropriate to your strength, then that's the best thing that you can do to see the quickest progression back to where you want to be. The amount of folk that I see that go to the gym and just use the same weights forever and ever and ever and ever, they're not going to see any progress, both in athletic performance and aesthetics, because once your body goes through that adaptation, it's now, that's normal to it, right? It's not going to have to adapt anymore, and we need to be able to find different ways of putting our bodies under stresses that it has to go through adaptation, and that's where we'll actually see improvement in physical performance and also from an aesthetic perspective.
Brilliant. Thank you, Graham. Yeah, that was brilliant. I learned a lot just hearing some of those answers. So and thank you to everyone for all of your thoughtful questions and active participation. We really hope that you feel it's been an hour of your time well spent. Before we conclude, could I ask that everybody just takes a moment to fill out, it's just a 2-question survey that we have popped in the chat. Your feedback's really important to us, so we'd appreciate any additional comments or suggestions that you might have as well. As Grant has highlighted, our next webinar is the next webinar in this series will take place on the 12th of June, so about a month from now, and it'll be at the same time as midday. The session is titled Getting Moving and Forming Habits. So this session is designed to get you moving. Grant will be showcasing various dynamic exercise routines, different techniques, and also practical tips on how to stay active and motivated. So, perfect for anyone looking to boost their fitness and incorporate more movement into their day. We look forward to seeing you all there, as we continue to explore ways to maintain and build on some of the progress that we've hopefully made today. What we'll do is automatically send out the invite to all of you that have attended this session. If you'd rather opt out of any future correspondence, then just let us know. I think that's it.
Yeah, I just want to say as well, look, if you've got folk that think that will get any benefit from this, please get them involved. I really want to make this as much as a community as possible, and really just remove stigmas behind exercise, and really hopefully give you some foundations that you can build on, and we can do it in a really kind of positive way.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks again for joining everyone, and have a great rest of the afternoon.